Before the Vikings became a legend, they were scattered people living on the fringes of the world. But one stormy night in 793 AD, a single raid would change history forever, unleashing a tidal wave of conquest, exploration, and terror. This is their story, Vikings.
Prehistoric Scandinavia, comprising modern-day Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, was a land shaped by glacial activity. As the ice sheets retreated around 10,000 BCE, they left behind a landscape of fjord, valley, and forest, creating a rich and diverse environment. The people who first ventured into these lands were hunter-gatherers, following the herds of reindeer and other game. One of the earliest known culture in this region was the Maglemosian culture, named after a bog site of Maglemos in Denmark, where the artifacts were first discovered. These early inhabitants were adept at exploring the resources of both land and water. They used tools made from bones, antlers, and flint to hunt deer, elk, and wild boar, and they fished in the abundant rivers and lakes. The Maglemosian people lived in small, mobile groups, constructing temporary shelter from wood and animal hides. Their way of life was heavily influenced by the changing seasons, with summer camps near the water sources and winter shelter in more protected inland areas. Around 4000 BCE, a significant transformation began to take place in Scandinavia. This period marks the transition from a purely hunter-gatherer lifestyle to one that includes farming and animal husbandry. This change, known as the Neolithic Revolution, was driven by climatic changes and the arrival of new people and the idea from the south. This is the funnel beaker culture. The funnel beaker culture, named after the distinctive pottery with funnel-shaped tops, represent one of the most significant early farming societies in Scandinavia. These people introduced new agricultural practices, including the cultivation of barley and wheat and the domestication of animals such as cattle, sheep. The funnel beaker people established more permanent settlements, often located on fertile soils near rivers and coastal areas. These communities were characterized by long houses made of timber, with thatched roof and wall of wattle and daub. Each longhouse likely housed an extended family, reflecting a more complex social structure than earlier period. This culture also saw the construction of large communal burial sites, known as the megalithic tombs. These tombs, built from massive stones, served as burial places for the elite and indicated a hierarchical society with emerging social satisfaction. The funnel beaker culture was notable for its advancement in pottery and tool making. The pottery was often decorated with intricate pattern and used for both practical and ceremonial purposes. They also made polished stone axes, which were not only tools but also status symbol traded over long distance. During this period, Scandinavia became a part of a broader network of trade and exchange. Amber found along the Baltic coast was highly prized and traded for goods such as flint, copper, and pottery. This exchange facilitated cultural and technological influences between Scandinavia and other parts of Europe. The time around 2800 BCE was a time of a new culture. A new culture was born, the coded ware culture. Around 2800 BCE, the funnel beaker culture began to evolve into what is known as the coded ware culture. This period saw significant changes in technology, economy, and social organization, influenced by migration and cultural exchange with the Eurasian steppes. The coded ware people are named after the distinctive pottery, which was decorated with cord impression. They introduced new technologies such as the plow and the wheel, which revolutionized agriculture and transport. They also began to use metal tools and weapons, marking the beginning of the Bronze Age. in Scandinavia. One of the most striking features of the coded ware culture was their burial practices. They buried their dead in single graves, often accompanied by grave goods such as weapons, tools, and pottery. These burials were sometimes covered with the mounds or cairns, indicating the importance of the individual and the emergence of warrior elite. The introduction of new technologies and practice led to increased agricultural productivity and the population growth. This period saw the development of larger and more complex societies with greater social stratification and the emergence of regional chiefdom. These changes laid the groundwork for the later development for the Scandinavian Bronze Age. The coded ware culture is also significant for its role in the spread of Proto-Indo-European language. Archaeological and linguistic evidence suggests the migrations from the Eurasian steppes brought new people and languages to Scandinavia during this period. These influences would have a lasting impact on the region's cultural and linguistic development. During the late Neolithic period, there was a significant interaction between the coded ware culture and the battle axe culture, which also had roots in the Eurasian steppes. This interaction led to the exchange of technologies, ideas, and genetics material, further shaping the cultural landscape of prehistoric Scandinavia. The art and symbolism of the coded ware culture reflect their complex belief system and social structures. They created finely crafted pottery decorated with geometric patterns and chord impressions. They also made ornate stone battle axes, which were both practical tools and symbols of power and prestige. The archaeological record provide valuable insight into the role of women in prehistoric Scandinavian societies. In the funnel beaker and the coded ware cultures, women played crucial roles in agricultural production, household management, and textile production. Grave goods and burial practices suggest that women could have achieved high status and were often buried with items indicating their social and economic rule. Women were primarily responsible for textile production, a vital industry in prehistoric Scandinavia. They used spindles and looms to create woolen and linen fabrics, which were used for clothing, blankets, and trade. This craft required significant skill and knowledge, and the quality of textile produced by these early societies were often high. Women also played an important role in social and religious life. They were involved in rituals and ceremonies related to fertility, agriculture, and the household. Some women were buried with the object that suggests they held religious or shamanistic roles, indicating their involvement in the spiritual life of their community. Climate change has a profound impact on prehistoric Scandinavia, influencing settlement patterns, subsistence strategies, and social organization. Periods of climate stability allowed for agricultural expansion and population growth, while colder and wetter periods led to change in settlements and resource use. The people of prehistoric Scandinavia were highly adaptable, developing new technologies and strategies to cope with changing environmental conditions. During colder periods, they shift their settlement to more sheltered location, diversifies their subsistence strategies to include a greater reliance on fishing and hunting. Climate change also played a role in the development and spread of the cultural innovation. For example, the introduction of metalworking during the late Neolithic period may have been facilitated by the change in climate that made certain resources more accessible. Similarly, shift in the climate could often have driven migration and cultural exchange that brought new ideas and technologies to the region. By 2300 BCE, Scandinavia was on the cusp of a new era. The innovation and the cultural development of Neolithic period had laid a strong foundation for the emergence of the Bronze Age. This period would see further advancement in technology, social organization, and trade, leading to the development of more complex societies and the rise of powerful chiefdom. The Neolithic period in Scandinavia left a lasting legacy. The transition to agriculture, the development of new technologies, and the emergence of complex societies set the stage for the future development. The cultural and technological innovation of this period would influence the region for centuries to come. As the Scandinavia transitioned into Bronze Age, many elements of Neolithic culture persisted. Agricultural practices, social structure, and artistic traditions continue to evolve, blending with the new influences and innovation. This continuity and change would shape the unique characters of Scandinavian Bronze Age societies. In the end of the Neolithic period marked the dawn of a new era in the prehistoric Scandinavia. It is the era of Bronze Age. The introduction of the bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, revolutionized tool making and weaponry. Bronze tools and weapons were more durable and efficient than their stone predecessors. Artisans in the Nordic region developed sophisticated techniques for casting and shaping bronze, producing items ranging from weapons and tools to intricate jewelries and ceremonial objects. During the Bronze Age, there was a notable shift towards more settled agricultural practices. Communities began to cultivate crops such as barley and wheat, and animal husbandry, cattle, sheep, and pigs became increasingly important. The development of agriculture led to more permanent settlements, which often consisted of long houses that housed extended families and their livestock. The Nordic Bronze Age was a period of extensive trade and cultural exchange. Scandinavian societies established trade networks that extended across Europe. These networks facilitated the exchange of goods such as amber, which was highly valued and used in jewelry, and bronze, which was traded for other commodities and raw materials. Evidence of these trade networks found in the form of foreign artifacts discovered in the Nordic archaeological sites, indicating contact with the region as far away as Mediterranean. The religious and cultural practices of the Nordic Bronze Age were complex and intertwined with daily life. This period saw the construction of significant ceremonial sites and the development of elaborate burial practices. Large stone structures such as dolmen and the passage graves were built as ceremonial sites. These structures often served as the burial places for important individuals and were likely center for religious and community gatherings. Additionally, rock carvings became prominent during this period. These carvings found across Scandinavia depict a variety of scenes including ship, animals, and human figures, suggesting a rich, symbolic, and religious life. The Nordic Bronze Age saw the development of increasingly complex social structure. Societies were likely organized into chiefdoms, where local chiefmen held a significant power and influence. These later controlled trade networks, organized labor for large construction projects, and played a key role in religious ceremonies. The society was hierarchical with clear distinction between different social classes. Chieftains and their families occupied the top of the social ladder, followed by the skilled artisans, farmers, and laborers. The distribution of wealth and power was evident in the construction of large, impressive burial mounds for elite, while commoners had simple burials. Warfare and conflict were also integral to Bronze Age societies. The production of weapons and the construction for defense structures suggests a need for protection and the existence of an intergroup conflict. Control over resources, trade routes, and territories would have been sources of tension and competition among different groups. The end of the Nordic Bronze Age around 500 BCE marked the transition to the Iron Age. This period brought significant changes, including the adoption of the iron for tools and weapons, which were more readily available and easier to produce than bronze. Social and cultural foundations laid during the Bronze Age, however, continued to influence Scandinavian society. The Nordic Bronze Age was a formative period that laid the groundwork for the later Viking Age. Advances in metallurgy, agriculture, trade, and social organization during this time created a foundation upon which Viking society would be built. Understanding the cultural and societal development of the Bronze Age provided crucial insight into the origin and the evolution of the Viking phenomena. As such, the legacy of the Nordic Bronze Age is deeply embedded in the history and the identity of Scandinavian people. This is the end of this video, and I hope you liked it. There's still something coming as the Viking Age, which would transform the life of these Nordic people into a heartless barbarians. The transformation of the Nordic people from what some historical narrative describe as civilized to what later accounts, particularly those of their enemies, describe as barbarians, is a complex process that involves numerous socio-political, economic, and cultural factors. We will analyze and delve into the intricacies of tribes and clans that populated the Scandinavian region before the Viking Age, exploring their conflicts, social, political structures, and border circumstances that contributed to a drastic shift in their collective behavior and reputation. This is the period of 200 CE to 400 CE. Before delving into specifics, it is crucial to understand the general structure of early Nordic society. These were primarily agrarian communities characterized by their reliance on farming, fishing, and to a lesser extent, trade. The early Nordic people lived in scattered settlements, which over time grew into larger villages and towns. Their societies were organized into clans or tribes, each led by a chieftain or a king. These leaders are often chose based on the combination of hereditary rights and martial powers. The primary social unit in pre-Viking Scandinavia were the clan, eid, and the tribe. Clans were extended family groups bounded by kinship ties, while tribes were larger groups that could encompass multiple clans. Each clan has its own set of custom, law, and tradition, which were strictly adhered to. The tribes, on the other hand, were often bound together to shared language, culture, and religious belief. The seafarers. Based in what is now central Sweden, the seafarers or Swedes were one of the most prominent tribes. They were known for their well-organized social structure and early development of proto-urban culture centers like Gamla Uppsala. The Swedes were ruled by a king who often had to balance power with influential chieftain. The Götar. Located in southern Sweden, the Götar or Geats were another significant tribes. They were notable for their agricultural power and their semi-mythical hero, Beowulf, whose legend later became a part of Anglo-Saxon literature. The Danes. Occupying modern-day Denmark, the Danes were a popular and influential tribe. They were known for their maritime skills and early development in shipbuilding, which later became a cornerstone of Viking raiding and exploration. The Norse. The Norse tribe were spread across modern-day Norway. These tribes were known for their rugged lifestyle, necessitated by harsh and mountainous terrain of their homeland. The Norse were formidable warriors and skilled seafarers, traits that would later define the Viking Age. The Sami. The Sami people inhabiting the northern part of Scandinavia and the Kola Peninsula were distinct from the other Nordic tribes. They were semi-nomadic, relying on reindeer herding, hunting, and fishing. The Sami has their own unique language and culture, which set them apart from other Nordic tribes. The relationship between these tribes were complex and often continuous. Alliances were formed and broken with regularity, and conflict were common. These conflicts could rise from competition over resources, territorial disputes, or power struggle among rival chieftains. The agrarian lifestyle of Nordic tribes made them heavily dependent on fertile land and access to water for farming and fishing. As population grew, so did the competition for the wider resources. This competition often led to skirmishes and raids between neighboring tribes. For instance, the fertile land of southern Sweden were highly coveted, leading to frequent clashes between the Swear and the Götar tribe. Similarly, the rich fishing ground along the coastline were a source of contention among the Norse tribe. Territorial boundaries between the tribes were often fluid and poorly defined, leading to frequent disputes. These disputes could escalate into full-scale wars, especially when powerful chieftains sought to expand their domain. One notable example is the conflict between Swear and the Danes over control of strategically important region of Skåne, Scania. The region is located in southern Sweden, but culturally and economically aligned with Denmark, was a hotly contested area throughout much of the early Nordic history. Within each tribe, there was a constant power struggle among rival chieftains. These internal conflicts could weaken a tribe, making it more vulnerable to external threats. The succession of chieftain or king were often a continuous process with multiple contenders vying for power. In the case of Danes, for example, the transition of power from one king to another was rarely peaceful. Ambitious chieftain would challenge the reigning king, leading to civil wars that could engulf the entire tribe. Religion played a significant role in the life of early Nordic people. The belief system was polytheist, with a pantheon of gods and goddesses who governed various aspects of life. Key deities include Odin, the god of wisdom and war, Thor, the god of thunder, and Freyr, the god of fertility and prosperity. Religious practices were deeply intertwined with daily life and governance. Chieftains and kings often claimed divine favor or descent to legitimize their rule. Major decisions such as going to war or making alliances were often accompanied by religious rituals and sacrifices to gain favor of the gods. The construction of monumental religious sites such as the Great Hall at Gamla Uppsala served as a center for worship and political power. These sites were not only places of religious significance but also venues for tribal assemblies and negotiation. Mythology and legends play a crucial role in shaping the identity and the values of Nordic tribes. Heroes like Beowulf and Sigurd were celebrated for their strength, bravery, and cunning. These legends were passed down through the oral tradition and later recorded in sagas and poems. The emphasis on martial power and heroism in these myths influenced the behavior and the value of Nordic people. Warriors are highly esteemed, and the feats of bravery are celebrated and rewarded. The transformation from perceived civilization to barbarian did not occur overnight. It was a gradual process influenced by a combination of internal and external factors. The period leading to Viking Age saw significant external pressures on Nordic tribes. These pressures came from both neighboring people and more distant forces. One of the most significant external pressure came from the Carolingian Empire under Charlemagne. His aggressive expansionist policies and attempt to Christianize the pagan people of northern Europe posed a direct threat to Nordic tribes. The Frankish campaign against the Saxons, who were culturally and linguistically related to the Nordic tribes, were particularly alarming. The brutal method employed by Charlemagne to subdue and convert the Saxons, including mass execution and forced baptism, served as a stark warning to the Nordic people. To the east, the expanding Slavic and Baltic tribe also posed a threat. These tribes were increasingly encroaching on Nordic territories, leading to conflict and the need for defensive measures. The expansion of the trade networks during this period also played a role. As trade routes extended into Scandinavia, the Nordic tribe gained access to new goods, wealth, and information. However, this also brought them into contact with wealthy and relatively undefended communities, tempting with some tribe to engage in raiding. Internal dynamics with the Nordic societies also contributed to the shift. The growing complexities of Nordic societies led to increased stratification and emergence of early forms of feudalism. Chieftains and kings began to consolidate power, creating hierarchical structure that placed warriors and nobles above common farmers and laborers. This stratification created tension within tribes as ambitious leaders sought to expand their power and influence. These power struggles often resulted in violent conflict, further destabilizing the region. The emphasis on martial power and heroism in Nordic culture fostered a warrior ethos. Young men were encouraged to prove their valor in battle, and successful warriors are highly esteemed. This warrior culture, combined with the constant threat of external invasion and internal power struggle, led to a society that increasingly valued and rewarded violence and aggression. Environmental factors also play a role in the transformation of Nordic societies. The period leading up to the Viking Age saw significant climatic changes, including cooler temperature and shorter growing season. These environmental changes placed additional strain on agrarian communities, leading to food shortages and increased competition for resources. In response, some Nordic tribes turned into raiding and plundering as a means of survival. By the late 18th century, the cumulative effect of this internal and external pressure had transformed Nordic societies. The one relatively isolated and agrarian tribe of Scandinavia had become a formidable force, ready to embark on the Viking raids that will leave an incredible mark on European history. The Viking Age is traditionally marked by the raid on the Lindisfarne monastery in 793 CE. This attack shocked the Christian world and signaled the beginning of a new era of Nordic expansion. The raiders, primarily Norsemen from what is now Norway, demonstrated the effectiveness of their seafaring skills and ferocity of their martial culture. The success of the Lindisfarne raid inspired further expedition, leading to a century of Viking incursions across Europe. Over the next few centuries, the Vikings expanded their reach far beyond their homeland. They established settlement and trading posts in British Isles, Iceland, Greenland, even North America. Viking explorers like Eric the Red and Leif Erikson pushed the boundary of the known world. The transformation of Nordic people from a collection of agrarian tribes into feared barbarians, a Viking Age, was a multifaceted process. It was driven by a combination of internal dynamics, including societal stratification, power struggle, and a warrior culture, as well as external pressure from expanding empire and changing environmental conditions. This period of upheaval and transformation ultimately forged the Viking identity, characterized by their seafaring power and martial valor, an insatiable quest for exploration and conquest. While often remembered for their raid and conquest, the Viking also left a rich culture and historical legacy that continue to fascinate and inspire to this day. The Viking Age, spanning from the late 8th century to the early 11th century, was a period marked by the seafaring prowess, exploration, and often ruthless raiding by the Norsemen. Two significant events that epitomize the Vikings' impact on Europe are the raid on Lindisfarne Abbey in 793 CE and Ragnar Lothbrok's audacious attack on Paris in 845 CE. These events not only showcase the Vikings' strategic planning and martial skills, but also their ability to strike fear into the hearts of their contemporaries. This detailed account delves into the meticulous preparation, execution, and aftermath of these pivotal raids. The serene and isolated island of Lindisfarne, also known as Holy Island, off the northeastern coast of England, was home to a Christian monastery renowned for its scholarly and religious significance. Founded by Saint Aidan in 635 CE, the abbey was a center of learning and spirituality, housing valuable manuscripts and treasures. The decision to raid Lindisfarne was driven by multiple factors. The Vikings, originating from Scandinavia, modern-day Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, were facing overpopulation, scarce resources, and internal conflicts. These pressures pushed them to explore and exploit wealthier and less defended territories. The rich monasteries of Britain, with their accumulated treasure and lack of fortifications, presented an irresistible target. The Viking longships, characterized by their sleek, shallow draft design, were instrumental in the success of these raids. Capable of navigating both open seas and shallow rivers, these ships allowed the Viking to strike swiftly and retreat before local forces could mount a defense. In early June 793 CE, a fleet of longships set sail from the fjords of Norway, their prows cutting through the cold water of the North Sea. The journey was perilous, with the crew enduring harsh weather and the constant threat of capsizing. However, the promise of plunder and glory spurred them on. As dawn broke on June 8, 793 CE, the monks of Lindisfarne began their daily prayers, unaware of the impending doom. The sight of the Viking ships on the horizon must have been both bewildering and terrifying. The longships glided onto the shore, and the Vikings, clad in their distinctive helmets and wielding axes and swords, disembarked with a singular purpose. The attack on Lindisfarne was swift and brutal. The Vikings stormed the abbey, slaughtering monks and pillaging treasures. The monastery's precious relics and manuscripts were either destroyed or carried off as booty. The sheer ferocity of the raid sent shockwaves throughout Christendom, as monasteries were seen as sacred and inviolable. The raiders spared few and took many as slaves, dragging them back to their ships. The survivors were left to mourn their dead and rebuild what remained of their community. The raid on Lindisfarne was not just a physical attack, but a psychological one, signaling the beginning of an era where no place, no matter how holy, was safe from the Viking onslaught. The raid on Lindisfarne had far-reaching consequences. It marked the beginning of the Viking Age, a period of over 2 centuries characterized by Norse exploration, trade, and conquest. The brutality of the attack shocked the Christian world, leading to widespread fear and the fortification of monasteries and coastal settlements. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, a contemporary record, poignantly describes the raid. In this year, fierce, foreboding omens came over the land of the Northumbrians, and shortly after, in the same year on 8 January, the harrowing inroads of heathen men destroyed God's church at Lindisfarne. The Vikings' success at Lindisfarne emboldened them to launch further raids across the British Isles, Ireland, and the continent. The wealth they accumulated through these raids funded their expedition and settlements, shaping the course of European history. Ragnar Lothbrok, a legendary figure in Viking lore, is a character shrouded in myth and historical ambiguity. According to the sagas, he was a king and warrior with a thirst for adventure and conquest. His lineage, deeds, and even his existence are subjects of debate among historians. However, the saga of his attack on Paris in 845 CE is one of the most famous Viking tales. By the mid-9th century, Paris, the capital of the Carolingian Empire, had become a symbol of wealth and power. The Frankish king Charles the Bold ruled over a fragmented empire, struggling to fend off internal revolts and external threats. For Ragnar and his men, Paris represented both a lucrative target and an opportunity to strike a blow against one of the most powerful rulers of the time. Ragnar's decision to raid Paris was influenced by several factors. The city was known for its rich churches and prosperous merchants, making it an attractive target for plunder. Additionally, attacking such a significant city would enhance Ragnar's prestige and cement his legacy. Preparation for the raid was meticulous. Ragnar assembled a fleet of 120 longships, gathering warriors from across Scandinavia. These seasoned fighters, driven by the promise of riches and glory, were equipped with the best weapons and armor of the time. The longships, designed for speed and agility, were stocked with provisions for the journey. Ragnar's leadership and charisma played a crucial role in rallying the men and maintaining their morale. The prospect of raiding Paris, a city renowned for its wealth, filled the Vikings with both anticipation and determination. In early spring 845 CE, Ragnar's fleet set sail from the Danish coast, navigating the treacherous water of the North Sea. The journey was fraught with challenges, including unpredictable weather and the ever-present risk of shipwreck. However, the Vikings' expertise in seamanship and their indomitable spirit saw them through. As they approached the Seine River, the Vikings encountered Frankish defenses. Undeterred, they pressed on, their longships gliding past the fortifications with remarkable ease. The sight of the massive fleet must have struck fear into the hearts of the defenders. By late March, the Viking fleet had reached the outskirts of Paris. The city, situated on the Ile de la Cité, was heavily fortified, with walls and towers guarding against invaders. Despite these defenses, the Vikings were undeterred. They disembarked on the banks of the Seine, their war cries echoing through the air. The Franks, aware of the approaching threat, had mustered a considerable force to defend the city. However, the sight of the vast Viking fleet and the ferocity of the invaders was overwhelming. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation. Ragnar's strategy was a combination of direct assault and psychological warfare. The Vikings launched a fierce attack on the city's defenses, using their superior mobility and combat skills to breach the walls. The Franks, though determined, struggled to repel the relentless onslaught. In a bold move, Ragnar captured 111 Frankish soldiers and hanged them on an island in the Seine, a gruesome display intended to demoralize the defenders and force King Charles to negotiate. The tactic worked. Faced with the prospect of further devastation, Charles the Bald agreed to pay a substantial ransom of 7,000 pounds of silver and gold to spare the city. The Vikings plundered Paris, taking valuables, food supplies, and hostages. The wealth they amassed was loaded onto their ships, and they retreated down the Seine, their mission accomplished. The raid on Paris had significant repercussions. For the Franks, it was a humiliating defeat that exposed the vulnerability of their defenses and the effectiveness of Viking tactics. The ransom paid to Ragnar further strained the empire's resources and highlighted the need for better coastal and riverine defenses. For Ragnar and his men, the successful raid was a monumental triumph. The wealth and prestige they gained bolstered their standing in the Norse world and inspired further raids across Europe. The legacy of Ragnar's attack on Paris lived on in Viking sagas and medieval chronicles, cementing his reputation as one of the greatest Viking warriors. The raids on Lindisfarne and Paris were more than just acts of plunder. They were pivotal moments that shaped the course of European history. The Viking Age, characterized by exploration, trade, and conquest, left an indelible mark on the continent. The attack on Lindisfarne signaled the beginning of an era where the Vikings would influence the political, cultural, and economic landscape of Europe. The monasteries, once seen as safe havens, were now vulnerable targets, leading to increased militarization and the eventual establishment of fortified towns and castles. Ragnar's raid on Paris demonstrated the Vikings' ability to challenge even the most powerful empires. The success of the raid highlighted the need for stronger defenses and more effective strategies to counter the Viking threat. It also underscored the importance of negotiation and diplomacy in dealing with the Norse invaders. The Viking attacks on Lindisfarne Abbey and Paris were defining events of the Viking Age. These raids, marked by meticulous planning, daring execution, and significant impact, showcase the Vikings' formidable capabilities and their profound influence on medieval Europe. From the shores of Lindisfarne to the gates of Paris, the legacy of these raids continues to captivate historians and enthusiasts alike, offering a glimpse into a tumultuous and transformative period in history. Exiled from Iceland for his fierce temperament and deadly disputes, Eric had vowed to carve out a new life in the uncharted territories to the west. The open sea stretched endlessly before him, a vast and unforgiving expanse that had swallowed many a sailor whole. But Eric was undeterred. With his loyal crew by his side and his ships laden with supplies, he sailed into the unknown, guided by the promise of fertile lands and boundless opportunities. As the days turned into weeks, Eric and his men faced the brutal challenges of the ocean, towering waves, freezing storms, and the ever-present threat of icebergs. Yet, through it all, Eric's indomitable spirit and unyielding leadership kept them pressing forward. And then one fateful morning, the mist parted to reveal a rugged coastline bathed in the pale light of dawn. Eric the Red had discovered Greenland, a vast and untamed wilderness that would become the new home for him and his followers. His daring voyage would not only change the course of his own life, but also leave an indelible mark on the annals of Viking exploration. This is the story of Eric the Red. Eric Thorwaldsen, better known as Eric the Red, was a figure who loomed large in the Norse world of late 10th century. His tale, woven from a mix of historical facts, sagas, and mysterious legends, paint a picture of a man both celebrated and feared. From his birth in Norway to his death in Greenland, Eric's life was marked by exploration, exile, and relentless pursuit of new lands. Watch this video till the end. This is the journey of Eric the Red. Eric the Red was born around 950 CE in the rugged landscape of Norway, a place known for its harsh winters and equally harsh societal norms. His father, Thorvald Aswaldson, was a chieftain of some renown, but also a man who'd carried the strain of blood on his hands. According to the sagas, Thorvald was exiled from Norway for committing manslaughter, not an uncommon occurrence in the Viking Age, where dispute often ended in death rather than reconciliation. This exile was a significant event in Eric's life, setting the stage for his own future of wandering and displacement. The family forced departure from Norway led them to Iceland, a place that was at the time a relatively new settlement for Norse people. Iceland, with its volcanic landscape and isolation, was a place where the harshest of souls could carve out a life. It was here, in the unforgiving environment of Iceland, that Eric was raised, learning the ways of the sea, the sword, and the stern code of honor that governed Viking society. Eric's life in Iceland, much like his father in Norway, was marked by violence. He married a woman named Hild, and they had several children, including the famous explorer Leif Erikson. However, Eric's temper and inclination for violence would soon lead him into trouble. Around 980 CE, Eric was involved in a series of feuds that would culminate in his own exile from the Iceland. The first of these incidents involved a dispute over some branch boats, which escalated into a violent conflict that led to the death of 2 men. Eric was sentenced to outlawry, a severe punishment in Viking society that effectively made a man a target for anyone who wished to kill him without legal consequences. Forced to leave Iceland, Eric did not return to Norway, but instead decided to explore lands to the west, where the tale of a mysterious icy land has been circulating. This land was known as Greenland, and it was to become Eric's new home and the centerpiece of his legacy. Eric's journey to the Greenland is one of the most remarkable tales of exploration in the Viking Age. According to the sagas, he set sail with several ships carrying his family, followers, and livestock. The journey was perilous, marked by storms and the ever-present danger of becoming lost in the vast icy water of the North Atlantic. Upon reaching Greenland, Eric and his followers established two main settlements: the eastern settlement near the modern-day Qaqortoq and the western settlement near Nuuk. These settlements would become the first known European colonies in North America, predating Columbus by nearly 500 years. Eric named the land Greenland in clever marketing policy to attract more settlers. Despite its name, Greenland was anything but green, with its landscape dominated by ice, snow, and rocky terrain. However, during Eric's time, the climate was slightly warmer than it's today, allowing for some agriculture and farming, though life was undoubtedly harsh. Eric ruled Greenland with a firm hand, becoming the leader of the settlers and the key figure in the survival of the colonies. His leadership, however, was not without controversy. Some accounts suggest that Eric was ruthless, enforcing his will through fear and violence, much like his chieftain of his homeland. One of the most intriguing aspects of Eric the Red's story is his connection to the exploration of Vinland, a land to the west of Greenland that was rich with resources. Vinland, identified by many scholars as a part of modern-day Newfoundland in Canada, was discovered by Eric's son, Leif Erikson. However, there are hints in the saga that Eric himself may have a role in these explorations. Some version of the saga suggests that Eric was initially supposed to lead the expedition to Vinland, but was prevented by doing so due to an accident. According to the story, Eric fell off his horse just before the voyage was set to begin, an incident he took as a bad omen, leading him to stay behind. His decision left Leif to become the leader of the expedition, ultimately resulting in the discovery of Vinland. The mystery surrounding Eric's potential role in the Vinland exploration added a layer to intrigue to his story. Was the accident truly an omen? Or was it a convenient excuse for Eric to avoid the dangerous journey? Some scholars speculate that Eric might have known more about Vinland than he'd let on, perhaps even visiting it before Leif, but chose to keep his knowledge to himself. The truth remained exclusive, buried in the mix of myth and the history that characterizes the sagas. Eric the Red's death, much like his life, is shrouded in mystery. The exact date of his death is not recorded, but it is believed to have occurred in 1003 CE. The sagas suggest that he died in Greenland, possibly due to an epidemic that swept throughout the settlements. However, there's also a story that he died after suffering a grievous injury, either from a fall or during a conflict. The manner of Eric's death has led to various interpretations. Some see it as a fitting end of a man whose life was marked by violence and exile, a death that came not in a battle, but as a result of a harsh and unforgiving environment he chose to call home. Others believe that his death was peaceful, surrounded by his family in the land he fought so hard to settle. One of the enduring mysteries of Eric the Red's life is the fate of his Greenlandic settlements. For centuries after Eric's death, these Norse colonies thrived, but by the 15th century, they had mysteriously disappeared. The reason for this decline remains a topic of debate among historians. Was it due to the climate change, hostile encounter with the indigenous ensued population, or economic isolation? While these factors likely played a role, the exact cause remained unknown, adding another layer of mystery to Eric's journey. Eric the Red's legacy as a pioneer of Greenland was carried forward by his son, Leif Erikson. Born in Iceland around 970-980 CE, Leif grew up hearing tales of his father's exploits and the distant lands that lay beyond the known world. As a young man, Leif embodied the Viking spirit of exploration and adventure, eventually surpassing his father's achievements by venturing even further westward. Leif Erikson's most famous voyage occurred around the year 1000 CE, when he sailed from Greenland to the shores of North America, becoming the first European to set foot on the continent, nearly 500 years before Christopher Columbus. The journey to what Leif would call Vinland was likely inspired by tales of earlier Norse explorations, particularly those of Bjarni Herjolfsson, who had sighted land to the west of Greenland but had not gone ashore. Leif assembled a crew of 35 men and set sail from Greenland, eventually reaching a land with fertile pastures, wild grapes, and abundant resources. The exact location of Vinland remains a subject of debate among historians, with theories ranging from Newfoundland in Canada to areas further south along the North American coast. Leif and his crew established a temporary settlement known as Leifsbudir, where they spent the winter before returning to Greenland. Although the settlement was short-lived and did not lead to permanent Norse colonization of North America, it represented the pinnacle of Viking exploration. Leif's journey expanded the boundaries of the known world and left a lasting legacy in both Norse history and the broader narrative of European exploration. Harald Hardrada, born in 1015 CE in Norway, was one of the last great Viking warriors and a figure whose life was deeply entwined with the shifting political landscape of medieval Europe. His early years were marked by turbulence. Harald was only 15 years old when he fought in the Battle of Stiklestad in 1030 CE, supporting his half-brother King Olafdad of Norway in an unsuccessful attempt to reclaim the throne. After Olaf's defeat and death, Harald was forced into exile, leading him to journey across Europe and the Byzantine Empire. His exploits during this period were legendary. He served as a mercenary in the Varangian Guard, the elite unit of the Byzantine army, and amassed both wealth and a formidable reputation as a warrior. Harald returned to Norway in 1046 CE, where he co-ruled with his nephew Magnus the Good. After Magnus's death in 1047 CE, Harald became the sole ruler of Norway, earning the nickname Hardrada, meaning hard ruler, due to his stern and often ruthless governance. Harald sought to restore Norway's power and influence, embarking on a series of military campaigns to assert his authority and expand his territory. One of Harald's most significant ambitions was to claim the throne of England, a goal that would ultimately lead to the final chapter of the Viking Age. The political situation in England during the mid-11th century was fraught with tension, and Harald saw an opportunity to press his claim based on a disputed agreement with the former English king Harthacnut. In 1066 CE, Harald Hardrada launched an invasion of England, assembling a fleet of over 300 ships and thousands of warriors. His initial success was swift. He captured York and achieved a major victory at the Battle of Fulford. However, Harald's campaign would soon come to a dramatic and decisive end. On September 25, 1066, Harald's forces were confronted by the English army led by King Harold Godwinson at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. The battle was fierce and brutal, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. Harald Hardrada fought with the ferocity that had defined his entire life, but he was ultimately killed by an arrow to the throat, marking the end of the Viking invasion of England. The Battle of Stamford Bridge is often seen as the symbolic end of the Viking Age. Just 3 weeks later, King Harold Godwinson himself was defeated by William the Conqueror at the Battle of Hastings, ushering in a new era of Norman rule in England. The deaths of Harald Hardrada and King Harold Godwinson in 1066 signal a major turning point in European history. The Viking Age, characterized by raids, exploration, and the establishment of Norse colonies, was drawing to a close. Several factors contributed to the decline of the Viking influence in Europe. One of the most significant factors was the consolidation of centralized kingdoms across Europe, particularly in England, France, and Scandinavia itself. The rise of powerful monarchies and the establishment of more organized and fortified societies made it increasingly difficult for Viking raids to achieve the same level of success as they had in previous centuries. Another crucial factor in the decline of the Viking Age was the Christianization of Scandinavia. By the late 10th and early 11th centuries, the process of converting the Norse peoples to Christianity was well underway. Figures like King Olaf of Norway, who was later canonized as Saint Olaf, played a key role in promoting Christianity and suppressing pagan practices. The adoption of Christianity led to significant changes in Norse society and culture. The warrior ethos that had driven the Viking Age was gradually replaced by the values of Christian kingship, which emphasized peace, justice, and the defense of the faith. As a result, the once dominant culture of raiding and exploration began to wane. Although the Viking Age came to an end in the 11th century, its legacy endured in many ways. The Norse influence can be seen in the cultural and genetic makeup of the regions they settled, including parts of the British Isles, Iceland, Greenland, and even North America. The tales of Viking explorers, warriors, and kings became an integral part of the medieval European imagination, inspiring sagas, legends, and historical chronicles. The legacy of figures like Eric the Red, Leif Erikson, and Harald Hardrada also continued to resonate through history. Eric the Red's colonization of Greenland established a lasting Norse presence in the North Atlantic, while Leif Erikson's voyage to North America foreshadowed the later European explorations of the New World. Harald Hardrada's life, marked by adventure and ambition, epitomized the spirit of the Viking Age, even as his death symbolized its conclusion.